In this week's Prime Minister's Questions, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak was asked some questions about his and his party's chairman's tax affair, and he could not give a straight answer. The SNP leader really hammered it home for me. Let us watch the video and tell me what you think in the comment below.
Does the Prime Minister agree that any politician who seeks to avoid the taxes they owe in this country is not fit to be in charge of taxpayer money?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to make my position on this matter completely clear to the House. The issues in question occurred before I was Prime Minister. With regard to the appointment of the Minister without portfolio, the usual appointments process was followed. No issues were raised with me when he was appointed to his current role. And since I commented on this matter last week, more information has come forward. And that is why I have asked the independent adviser to look into the matter. Now, I obviously can't prejudge the outcome of that, but it is right that we fully investigate this matter and establish all the facts.
Mr. Speaker, he avoided the question. I think anybody watching would think it's fairly obvious that someone who seeks to avoid tax can't also be in charge of tax. Yet, for some reason, the Prime Minister can't bring himself to say that or even acknowledge the question. Now, last week, the Prime Minister told this House that the chair of the Tory party had addressed his tax affairs in full, and there was nothing to add. This week, after days of public pressure, the Prime Minister now says there are serious questions to answer. What changed?
Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I know he reads from these prepared sheets, but he should listen to what I actually say. Since I commented on this matter last week, more information, including a statement by the Minister without portfolio, has entered the public domain, which is why it's right that we do establish the facts. And Mr. Speaker, let me take a step back. Now, of course, the politically expedient thing to do would be for me to have said that this matter must have been resolved by Wednesday at noon. But I believe in proper due process. That's why I appointed an independent adviser, and that's why the independent adviser is doing his job. But the opposition can't have it both ways. The shadow leader, also his party chair, both urged me and the government to appoint an independent adviser, and now he objects to that independent adviser doing their job. It's simple political opportunism, and everyone can see through it.
Yes, Starmer. We all know why the Prime Minister was reluctant to ask his party chair questions about family finances and tax avoidance. But his failure to sack him when the whole country can see what's going on shows how hopelessly weak he is. A Prime Minister overseeing chaos, overwhelmed at every turn. He can't say when ambulances will get to heart attack victims again. He can't say when the prison system will keep streets safe again. He can't even deal with tax avoiders in his own cabinet. Is he starting to wonder if this job is just too big for him?
Mr. Speaker, the difference between him and me is that I stand by my values and my principles even when it is difficult. When I disagreed fundamentally with the previous Prime Minister, I resigned from the government. But for four long years, he sat next to the member for Islington North. anti-Semitism ran rife, when his predecessor sided with our opponents. That's what's weak, Mr. Speaker. He has no principles and just petty politics.
Mr. Speaker, may I ask the Prime Minister, what advice would he have for individuals seeking to protect their personal finances? Should they seek out a future chair of the BBC to help secure an £800,000 loan? Should they set up a trust in Gibraltar and hope that HMRC simply don't notice? Or should they do as others have done and simply apply for non-dom status?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, let me share with the honourable gentleman expressing my sympathies to the families and indeed the firefighter who's currently in hospital. I'm sorry to hear that and wish him a speedy recovery. Mr. Speaker, I'm proud of the record of this government is supporting the most vulnerable in our society. Just this winter, helping all families £900 with their energy bills, raising the national living wage to record levels and ensuring that our pensioners get the support they need. That's what this government is doing to ensure financial security in this country.
I'm not sure what question the Prime Minister thought I asked, but that certainly was not it, Mr. Speaker. But let's be clear about this. This is now a matter of the Prime Minister's own integrity and accountability. After all, when there was questions about the Home Secretary, and concerns about her role in relation to national security, he chose to back her. Now the chair of the Tory party, he's choosing to back him despite a £5 million penalty from HMRC. And of course, he's seeking to protect the former Prime Minister despite his cosy financial relationship with the chair of the BBC. Is it little wonder that people in Scotland may well just consider the Tory party to be a parcel of rogues?
Mr. Speaker, what I'm standing up for is proper due process. That's why we have an independent advisor. It's right that the independent advisor conducts his investigation. That's how we will ensure accountability, and that's what I will deliver.
Rob Roberts.
Well, what do you think? Has the Tory chairman got any legs to stand on? Let's watch another clip from the head of HMRC. He's the head of HMRC. He's the head of Revenue and Customs, talking about what carelessness means to the tax office. May I remind you, this is in direct relation to the Tory chairman's current tax affairs.
I'll move over to Sarah Olney MP.
Thank you very much, Chair. Mr. Harra, I was just wondering, what does HMRC understand, or what does it mean to imply when it uses the word carelessness, that someone has been careless with their tax return, and what should the general public understand by the use of that term?
Again, I'm not commenting on any particular person's affairs, but carelessness is a concept in tax law. It can be relevant to how many back years that we can assess, and it can be relevant to whether someone is liable to a penalty, and if so, what penalty they would be liable to for an error in their tax affairs. There are no penalties for innocent errors in your tax affairs. So if you take reasonable care but nevertheless make a mistake, whilst you will be liable for the tax and for interest if it's paid late, you would not be liable for a penalty. But if your error was as a result of carelessness, then legislation says that a penalty could apply in those circumstances. So those are the two occasions when HMRC would consider whether non-compliance was careless, when we need to understand what back years we can assess and when we need to understand whether there is a penalty due.
Okay, so carelessness could mean in your case that just to come back to what you were saying, that was an innocent mistake. So a not innocent mistake, is that when carelessness would be?
I use the term innocent. I don't think that's the statutory language. The statutory language is despite taking reasonable care. So if you get your tax wrong despite having taken reasonable care with it, then there's no question of us charging you a penalty. You would, of course, still have to pay the tax. But if you have been careless in your tax affairs and as a result of that carelessness have made a mistake, then you could be liable for any understatement of tax that you've made.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.